those of you that aren't aware of it, if you ever want to join and have some learning, we have a class every morning at 10 to 11, and a class every afternoon from 3 to 4. And once a week, we have a guest speaker. Today, we are honored to have with us a close friend of mine, known him for many years. His name is Rabbi Yossi Bronstein. He's the Chabad Shliach of West Hollywood. And I believe it's also called Davie. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
So it's West Hollywood and Davie. And he runs a shul and many programs there called the Congregation Judea. And I believe Rabbi Bronstein was once the Rosh Yeshiva at one point, gave many shiurim, and came down to Florida to run a yeshiva, and has done many, was also in charge of the kashrus, the kosher supervision of the OK. And Rabbi Bronstein is now a Chabad Shliach of a shul, of a community, of an area. And so with no further ado, Rabbi Bronstein.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Smith. It is a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here. And I know Rabbi Smith for many, many years. Do you remember Rabbi Smith? I gave a lecture once in North Miami Beach about 15 years ago, was it?
Yeah,
a nice
right.
Group. You're doing a fantastic job. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. It's an honor and it's a pleasure to be here and to speak with you. I'm not calling it a class. I'm calling it a Verbringen. That's what he told me. That's what Rabbi Smith said. It's a Verbringen class. A Verbringen means that we are together as a group, and we're not here to lecture and to show how much we know and to show the intellectual and speak about topics of the Gemara, just to share and to schmooze and to bring out interesting points in our relationship with the Rabbeinu Shalom, with God Almighty. And so this is what Verbringen is all about, just eye to eye, a conversation and a schmooze, a chat. That's what a Verbringen is, a tva'adut, as we get together and we try to encourage and inspire each other with stories of tzaddikim and with stories from the Gemara, and just to bring out the positive light, especially in our days that we need so much chizuk, we need so much encouragement and strengthening of our emunah and inspiration. So I think this is what it's going to be. It's going to be more the form of a chat and a Verbringen than lecturing on a certain topic. Yeah, and as he said, my name is Rabbi Joseph Bronstein. I'm the rabbi of Congregation Judea Chabad on Sterling Road for the past 12 years. Our shul has a very interesting story. The shul has been founded in 1981 as a conservative, liberal, conservative shul, temple. And in 2012 years ago, they were looking for a rabbi, and they asked me if I could convert them, so to speak. And we turned it into a Chabad, an Orthodox Chabad shul, and it's flourishing, and it's a beautiful shul. And we are functioning for the last 12 years with minyanim and classes and different events, Shabbatonim. You're all invited to visit us during the week, and if you live in the area, you can walk to shul. You're all welcome to come anytime on Shabbos and Yom Tov to our shul. So thank you very much again for listening to me, and let's begin. This is the time of the year when we prepare ourselves. We already, especially as rabbis and administrators of the shul, you're already, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about the high holidays. The holidays are coming up. And if you look in in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. It tells us already, it tells us to prepare ourselves for the high holidays. And one of the things it says we should do is check mezuzahs and tefillin. That's one of the ways that you begin the preparation, the hachana for the high holidays. Before that, I like to touch on a Dvar Torah from last week, and then we'll move into the talking about tefillin. Last week, in the Parsha of Balak, we were reading a story of an anti-Semite, Balak, who was afraid of the Israelites who are making progress and are going to enter the land of Israel shortly, soon. And they had to cross, they had to just pass his territory. And he was afraid that they're going to wage war with him. And he saw from the past, from before, that whoever they fought, they won. God is with them. And he said, if I'm going to do that, and I'm relatively a much smaller nation than the nations before, my neighbors, so I for sure will lose the battle. Therefore, he was looking for unconventional weapons of war to fight with the Jews and to see maybe he could win them over that way. So he commissioned a prophet by the name of Bilam. And what did he ask from Bilam? That he should curse the Jewish people. And perhaps if he's a prophet, he's a spiritual man, and if he curses, maybe it will work. It will weaken the Jewish people. The question is being asked, why did he go that direction? Why didn't he ask the prophet to bless himself, to bless Balak? Why did he take the approach of cursing the Jews versus blessing him? If the Navi, if Bilam would have blessed him that he should succeed in the war and he should do well, maybe that would have worked much better. So how come he went and he took the negative instead of the positive? The answer perhaps could be found in a story that being told in Chabad. We know the famous story. The Rabbi Maharash, okay, the fourth Lubavitch Rabbi, had two children. One was the Razor, and the other one was the Rashab. The Razor is Reb Zalman Aaron. The Rashab was Shalom Dober, the fifth Lubavitch Rabbi. The Razor was older than the Rashab. He was older, born 4 or 5 years older than him. Even though he was older, but he was shorter than him. The Rashab was taller than him. One day, their father, the Maharash, the fourth Lubavitch Rebbe, was watching them through the window playing, and they were playing, and the Razor, the Razor was the shorter one, and the Rashab was the taller one, sorry. So the Razor dug a little hole in the ground and told his brother, who is taller than him and younger than him, go down there. Then, when he went down, he said, you see, I'm taller than you. Their father witnessed it, and he called him over and he said, in order to make yourself bigger, you don't have to put him down. What you should have done, get up on a chair, and then you'll become taller. The same thing is with Balak and Bilam. There's two approaches in life. You can either go and attack negatively, and that's the way you live your life, or you can take the positive approach. Obviously, Balak didn't have the positive approach. He had the negative approach in life. And this is what we should learn in life, that in order that we should look at life, and we should look generally in our relationship to the Rebbeinu Shalom, with people, with the positive eye, with the right eye. instead of knocking down the other one. And this is why Balak perhaps wanted to curse the Jews, because that was his aim. This was his nature. This is who he was. It wasn't so much, a positive, didn't take the positive approach of blessing him, but I guess this is something that we can take home, a message we can take home from the past of the week. Now let's go on and let's discuss the topic, as I mentioned to you, about mezuzahs and tefillin. We know that mitzvot, I say practical mitzvot, are very important. The mitzvah of mezuzah and making sure that kosher mezuzahs are on our doors, especially this mitzvah, is so much written about it, how the mitzvah has an effect on the house and the home, protection, and I would like to share with you a few stories about. We'll begin with the story about mezuzah and the enormous effect of the mezuzah. Perla Cohen was a Jewish student in Lyon, France. She visited the Gurevich family who were shluchim in Lyon every Shabbos. Every Friday night she came for a Friday night meal. She came with friends, Jewish friends, and they enjoyed it very much. Perla was not ready to transform her life to observe mitzvot and she enjoyed the spirit, the masoret, the tradition of Judaism, but practical mitzvot didn't mean much to her. Mrs. Gurevich was pushing her from time to time. Perla, maybe put up at least a mezuzah on your door and where you live. No, it's not for me. It's just not for me. I love Yiddishkeit, I love Judaism, but I don't go for these little things, for the particular mitzvot. But after coming to the Gureviches for a while, she thought maybe I should put up a mezuzah on the door. And she did. She lived somewhere in Lyon in one of the apartment buildings, and the mezuzah was hanging there. And it's been already a while, a few months that the mezuzah was there. She had a group of friends visiting her one time, and they said to her, Perla, are you not afraid? We live in such a strange world, and anti-Semitism is all over, especially here in Lyon, in France. Are you not afraid to remove it, to have a mezuzah on the door? So Perla says, you may be right. And she removed the mezuzah. She removed the mezuzah. One day, she returns home and she sees on the door a note, probably from a shipping company, from UPS or FedEx, saying that we attempted to deliver a package to you, but you weren't home. So it's downstairs by this person who was holding a package for you. So she went down and she knocked on the door. It was a gentleman that opened up. He says, "Oh, I have a package for you, and here's the package." I just crossed by the hallway, and I saw the guy, the delivery man, and you weren't home, so he asked me if I could keep it for you, and he gave it to her, and then he says, "Shalom," and she says to him, "Are you Jewish?" He says, Yes, I am Jewish." "Let me ask you a question," says the gentleman to Perla. "Why did you take off your mezuzah?" And she says, what's the issue? So he says that he's a survivor, a Holocaust survivor. When he escaped and when he came to Lyon, he just wanted to forget about everything in life, about everything about Judaism. He didn't want to have anything to do with mitzvot. A few weeks ago, he had to cross by and he sees the mezuzah. He stopped and he broke out in a cry. Everything came back. Everything that his youth, his grandparents, his Yiddishkeit. And he stood there like frozen, and he couldn't walk away. And from that time on, he said to her, every day when he came home, he used to make sure to walk by her apartment and look at the mezuzah and touch the mezuzah, and then go back to his apartment. And he was so disappointed that 2 weeks ago, suddenly the mezuzah disappeared. So then she understood how the effect of the mezuzah. It's not only to protect her, it's not only to protect her in the house and outside, it's a message to the world. It's a message, it's something ingrained in each and every one of us. It reminds us on all the mitzvahs. So the mezuzah writing and the mezuzah having on the door and the mezuzah checking in the summer before the high holidays is a very important thing to do. Remember that, it's very important. It's customary by Farbrengen to say L'chaim, so I'm going to say L'chaim. L'chaim, everyone.
L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, Rabbi.
So this is one story about mezuzah checking and how important that is during the summer. Let me tell you another story of a mezuzah. Stories of the Baal Shem Tov, stories about tefillin, mezuzahs, and so on and so forth. Just to remind myself another story. I have to tell you another story. No, before. Symbolism, this Jewish symbols mean so much. The shliach in South Africa gets a phone call one day, and he gets a phone call from a lady, not Jewish, and she says, could you do me a favor? Could you come over to the cemetery where my husband is buried? He was Jewish. And there's something written on the tombstone. Could you please interpret it or translate it or tell me what it means, what it says? He says, no problem. She happened to be black person, and she was married to this Jewish man, and he died, and she buried him, and he asked her to put something Jewish on the stone, something Jewish. Okay. So she wanted to know what it's all about. So she called the rabbi, the shliach. The shliach came over. He walked into the cemetery. You see a beautiful stone, beautiful, nice, everything. But there was a symbol on it, upside down, in Hebrew. Kosher lePesach. Kosher lePesach. What does kosher lePesach do on the tombstone? Kosher lePesach, upside down. So he says to her, would you tell me, please, what is this all about? He explained to her that kosher lePesach means it's kosher for Passover. So he asked her, what does it mean? Why did you put the kosher lePesach?
הכיסא גלגלים להשתתף בסיום הרמב"ם היה יציב נאמן לבית רבינו. אנו זוכים להשתתפות בנו.
Rabbi, you muted yourself. Rabbi, you're still muted. Rabbi, you're still muted.
Rabbi Bronstein,
now?
okay.
Now
Yeah.
you're better.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. So he said to her, why do you say, what is this all about? So she said, they were sitting in the kitchen and discussing what's going to be after his demise, and he wants to be buried. He asked her, do me a favor, put something Jewish on the tombstone, on the stone. So she says to him, I don't know what to put. So he says to her, you see that little box over there? There's a box of matzahs from Strites, and it said on it kosher lePesach. So he says to her, you see that little symbol, kosher Pesach? Take this to the engraver and let the engraver engrave the kosher Pesach on the stone. So the rabbi explained to her what it's all about. Again, this brings out the Yiddish and neshama. This brings out who we are and what we are. Doesn't make a difference where a person ends up being. Doesn't make a different person who he married. A neshama is a neshama. A Yiddish and neshama is there and so powerful that it comes out. It comes out sometimes. Sometimes it comes out, unfortunately, after a person passed on. But this is what a Yiddish and neshama is, and therefore this is the story of the kosher Pesach on a tombstone somewhere in Africa in a cemetery. My dear friends, this is it. Let me tell you another story. My grandfather was a Moel, and it was a sheikhet in Russia. Goes back during the communist era. And my father was a young man, and they were so scared they had to hide themselves. My grandfather had a beard, so he had to cover himself when he walked in the street. They shouldn't recognize he's Jewish, and it was scary. But he made sure to the Bris Milah. He made on people quietly underground. He was called to do the bris middle of the night, and he was moster nefesh. He sacrificed himself to fulfill the mitzvah of making other people the first mitzvah of a bris. My father told me that one time before he went at night, his grandfather, Chaim Ezra, the Moel, told him, Zalman, I'll wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We have to go somewhere. He was a young boy. So he woke him up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're walking at night, middle of the night. It's dark in the street. And finally, somewhere in Russia, maybe Moscow or somewhere, and they approach a building, an apartment building, and they quietly enter the building and go up the 3rd or 4th or 5th floor. And my grandfather knocked quietly on the door, and the door opened up. An elderly lady opened the door, shut, and she rushed him in quickly. And here there was a little baby laying there and was waiting for the bris. But turns out that she's Jewish. Her son, that's her grandson, the baby is the grandson. The father of this baby was a high-ranking communist who was against a bris, he didn't want to even hear about it. But he told his mother, when I go away, if I have to go somewhere, you can do whatever you want. But I don't want to know from it, I don't want to be part of it. So she took the opportunity when her son was away, and she made sure to contact my grandfather somehow to the Hasidim who were underground Hasidim, and he made the bris. My father says that he was the sandik, and my grandfather was the moel, made a bracha, made a bris, gave him a Jewish name, and left. My father told me, father's gone already, but he said, there's somewhere a Yid in Russia. I don't know if he's practicing or not, but there's a Yid with the Yiddish and the Shama because he had a bris in a certain way, to Mesir Nefesh, to self-sacrifice of a chassid. So that shows again the neshama, that shows again the connection, the relationship that we have with the Rabbeinu Shalom, something which is above and beyond, it transcends all intellectual capacity. It's just something above and beyond. It's a deep and a very deep kesher connection that we have with the Rabbeinu Shalom. Hi. All these stories, it says that by Fabrengen, you're supposed to share stories, because the stories is like, the effect of the history and stories of tzaddikim, of Hasidim, is so powerful. Everything is powerful. When you learn Torah is powerful, when you learn Halacha is powerful, when you learn Gemara, Hasidus, but there's something very unique and very different in listening and hearing how Yidden of the past gave their lives for the performance of mitzvahs, practical mitzvahs. And this is something which leaves a mark on everyone who hears. You take it home. You walk away from the Farbrengen with such an amazing feeling of perhaps get closer, become better, learn more, do more. This is what the Farbrengen is all about. I was recently, about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was in Ukraine for about 10 days, 11 days. And we visited the, Mezbos, where the Baal Shem Tov was, Barditchev, Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchev. We went to Hadich, where Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya, is buried. We went to all the great kvarim, great places. It's such a feeling when you walk in there. It's such a beautiful feeling. There's something you can't describe. Being there in their environment, it's something so serene, so unique, so holy. And that was my second visit. I happened to go to visit the Baal Shem Tov's synagogue, shul, where he davened. You walk into that shul, and if you read all the stories, it's just like, you don't want to leave. It's a small little shul made of wood, a wooden shul. And this is where he sat. This is where, wow. Let me tell you a few stories about the Baal Shem Tov and in his shul. Baal Shem Tov had a chassid, a friend chassid by the name of Rabbi Ze'ev Kitzis. Kitzis, that's his name. By the way, he's buried next to him. And Rabbi Ze'ev Kitzis was a chassid of the Baal Shem, a talmid of the Baal Shem, chassid. Early in the summer days, about 230 years ago, the Baal Shem Tov said to Reb Zev, listen, Reb Zev, I want you to be the Baal Tokeya. You'll blow the shofar this coming Rosh Hashanah in shul. Me? I should blow the shofar? Who am I? What am I? A Baal Tokeya has to be of a very high level. Says Baal Shem Tov, don't worry about it. I'll give you a list of kavanot, which means all things that you have to learn, all things that you have to learn as a preparation to blowing the shofar. And I want you to prepare, study it every day, go to the mikveh, and prepare yourself spiritually, mentally, psychologically. Prepare yourself. It's not a simple thing to be out to Baal Tokeya, for Klal Yisrael, for all the Yidden. It's not a simple thing. Prepare yourself. When we get to Rosh Hashanah, I want you to be there. I want you to be at that level where you can represent Am Yisrael right there at the bima in our shul. Okay? If the Rebbe wants, that's what we have to do. So he took the note, the kavanot, it's called kavanot. And he took it home. Every day he went to the mikveh, he studied, he learned, he prepared himself. And as the days got closer to Rosh Hashanah, you can imagine how nervous he was, how he was into it and learning and memorizing and totally taken over by all what the Baal Shem Tov told them to study, to learn, to memorize. Could you imagine a day before Rosh Hashanah, what he felt like? He's going to be the Baal Tokeya in the Baal Shem Tov shul. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the morning of the Rosh Hashanah? He came to shul. The shul was packed with people. Baal Shem Tov is sitting there with a kittel, with a talis over his head. And he is in shul preparing himself to go up to the bima and to blow the shofar for the crowd. based on all the studies and all the kabbanot that the Baal Shem Tov presented him months ago. And he made sure before he went to shul that his notes, his little index card with all the markings and all the abbreviations are written there, and he put it in his pocket. Came to shul, and it's after Kriyat HaTorah, and he's about to go, and he goes up to the bima. The shofar is on the table, and he's trying to put his hand in his pocket to find the note. He can't find it. Maybe here, it's not here. Maybe here, it's not here. He couldn't find it, and he was totally devastated. Could you imagine, after all these months, he's not going to have the kabbanot in front of him while he's tokeh shofar? He forgot everything. He couldn't remember what he learned. He couldn't remember all the kabbanos that the Baal Shem Tov asked him to memorize. And suddenly, he doesn't have it. Came to the actual point, to the moment, that he prepared himself all these months, and he doesn't have the note. He was so zerbrochen. He was so smashed and devastated. He couldn't get to himself. He broke out in a cry. Nobody saw it. He covered his head with his talents. He's unable to tell them, wait till I go and look for it. He had to do the tkiyot as is. Baal Shem Tov was sitting there up front and waiting for the tkiyot to take place. Reb Zev was so smashed and was so heartbroken. You can imagine, he wanted to bury himself alive, but he had to do it. So he made the bracha, Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu, Shmo HaKol Shofar. And he's crying, and he's heartbroken and smashed. And he takes the shofar, and he blows the shofar. Tkiya, Shvarim.
I think we lost the rabbi. Rabbi.
We lost him at an interesting point.
Always at the climax.
Rabbi Bronstein, you're frozen. Let's, Rabbi Bronstein? Okay, maybe he'll come right back. Oh, okay. You have to unmute.
And the Baal Shem Tov was sitting there in shul, and he's sitting and covered with his talents, and he is afraid to face the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov gets up, about to walk out. He walks over to him and he says, Reb Zev, oh, your tkiyas was something out of the world. What? The tkiyas was oh, this time your tkiyas had such an effect. It changed so many negative rules right there in heavenly court, just because your tkiyas. What did Rabbi, I didn't have the kavanah, says the Rabbi. That was the whole point. The way you were broken, your heart broken, the lev nishbar. You were so smashed. You became so bottled, so nullified to the will of Hashem, to the mitzvah, to the practical mitzvah of doing just the shofar. Forget about the kavanot. Just the way you felt was a receptacle, was a tool, was a way to receive the greatest blessings from Hashem. Your lev nishbar, your broken heart, was the kavanah, was the right thing. This is what I meant to do. You did much better with the way you felt than with all the kavanot that I gave you. Again, my dear friends, this is what a Yid is all about. A Yid is something deeper than just, it's not a superficial thing. It's not something out, not something external. In Hasidic terminology, it's called a pnimi, an emes, the real truth, the real pnimi, something which is internal, something that no one can take it away from us, and we cannot get rid of it. This is what Yid is all about. and it taps into the neshama. It taps into the essence of who we are.
And what?
So l'chaim, my dear friends, l'chaim, this is what it's all about as we preparing for Rosh Hashanah. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim.
Oh, you know, there's a
Somebody
bomb.
wants to say something or comment or
Bomb's great.
yes.
What you got it on the WhatsApp?
Say it again.
You know,
Somebody asking something?
Ben, I think Ben has a question. Ben?
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to make a comment that there might be another reason Balak chose to curse instead of bless himself. He probably saw that the other nations all lost. They probably blessed themselves, but it didn't work because their gods are not gods. So he figured he better curse.
An interesting observation. Thank you very much. Good. You know, the Torah could be the Torah stories. The stories of the Torah could be interpreted and studied from different angles. It's a good point that you brought out. Very nice. Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
my Abraham, I have a mezuzah story I'd like to share with you.
Pleasure.
When I became Jewish, I'm a Jew by choice, I'd heard my wife was Jewish, but they were secular. All I heard was about Judaism, and the practice of Judaism was tradition. So I accepted that was just tradition, right? Nothing else. There's no spiritual things in it or anything. So when I converted, the first thing we had to do was put mezuzahs up in our house. But I couldn't find anybody to put them up. And I was in a moment at that time, I was trying to get an appointment for a business meeting. It was about an hour's drive away. And something kept on happening that I couldn't somehow make I would be available one time and then the other person wasn't. And this was going on for days. And I still had the mezuzahs up. So eventually, and God bless him, a Chabad rabbi, who was the only one I could find, and came along and put them up. When he put them up, I felt spiritually 4 pillars, boom, 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 come down in my house. And it was though the piles are driven down. And I went, wow, this is not tradition. And I realized then that it's not tradition. These things are eternal spiritual rules. And it's not a matter of tradition. And I was really, Hashem really put me on the right path to realizing, you know what, rituals and things like this can so easily forget that they really are very dynamic. And by the way, the next day I called up and I could go. It was I couldn't go before those mezuzahs were put up in my house.
Beautiful. Nice story. For this, I'll say another l'chaim.
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 Am I allowed to make a l'chaim on seltzer?
How do you know it's seltzer?
Are you allowed to make a l'chaim on seltzer?
You can say l'chaim. Why not? L'chaim on seltzer is okay. By the way, we say l'chaim not to get high. We say l'chaim to get higher and higher. Get the point? We say l'chaim to get higher and higher, not high. As v'sholem, we don't get high. That's not the point. We say l'chaim to get higher. The Glenlivet just gives us a little boost to get higher and higher and even higher and higher and higher. L'chaim. Thank you for the story. Beautiful story. I'll share with you another story that happened with my father. Again, brings out the depth, the nekuda sayadus, the neshama of a yid, how deep it is. It's engraved. It's part of the essence. We can reach and tap into it. We can imagine that we're tapping into it, but it's more than just that. Let me share with you a story that happened with my father. I shared the story this last Shabbos in my shul because last Sunday, not Sunday, Shabbos actually was my father's yahrzeit, so I felt that. My father is known in Chabad as the Baal Menagim. Baal Menagim, that he was, he knew how to sing, he knew how to express himself in a nigun. He had an unusual voice, and he was able to not only sing, but to tell the story. Lahavdil, as we know, in an opera, you sing and you tell a story, and the melody, the song and the story, the same thing by us. The opera is the nigunim, the story of the love that we have to Hashem, and Hashem loves us. My father was a singer in the Russian army. He served in the Russian army for 4 years, and eventually even he reached a higher rank. And it got to a point where they even asked him at that time, it goes back in 1943, they asked him to join the army permanently, and they promised him income and a house and what, he'll be set for life just to stay in the Russian army. That's another story how he managed to escape. He managed to let go of it. But while he was in the army, something very interesting happened. Among a few stories that are related, that are connected with his singing, with his expression and singing. It was during the war, Second World War, and he was laying in his bunker. He was laying in his bunker to rest, and someone walked in. He was resting, and somebody walked in. They happened to be his commander, and he walks in with to shave himself, the commander, and he starts singing a song, beautiful Russian song, and he sang it so off tune, so wrong. My father, being so musical, couldn't stand when somebody sings a song or anything and it's off tune or it's wrong. So he commented to him in a nice way, how do you sing it? I mean, it's not. So the guy says, what do you mean? You sing it. So my father says to him, how can I sing it? It's a war going on. I miss my wife and 3 kids at home, and I'm not in the mood of singing. But you commented, right? Come on, I want to hear you singing. So my father says, you want me to sing? I'll sing it. So he sang, and he says, wow, what a voice. What an amazing expression. Wow, what are you doing here? You should be among the entertainers. In those days, they needed the entertainers to go and keep the morale up. So my father says, I don't know, I'm here. This is where I have to be. A few days later, he gets a call to the intercom, I guess, that they asked him to please roll back about whatever, a few hundred feet, roll back to the base. They're waiting for him. There will be somebody waiting to talk to him. My father told me it was very dangerous because in order to go back, he couldn't walk, because if he would have got up, he would have gotten a sniper. The snipers were all over, the German snipers. So he had to roll in the mud. There was a wire that he had to hold on and roll back in the mud. And finally he did it, and he got back to, and he sees a horse was standing there with an officer and says, are you Bronstein? I'm waiting for a while already. Please go up to the horse. We need you in the base, in the headquarters. So he got on the horse, and he was scared. He didn't connect this with what happened with his commander. So he got scared. He thought that maybe he's being punished or for something that he did wrong. So when he came back to the place. He was called in front of a few officers, and they told him, we heard that you're a singer. We heard that you have a beautiful voice. We want you to stay here and they closed the door, and they told him, "You know what today is?" He says, "No." "But do you know that today is Yom Kippur?" He says, "Yom Kippur." He right away understood that the three officers sitting there were actually Jewish. So he says, according to my calculation, Yom Kippur is next week, not today. They said, "No, today is Yom Kippur, tonight. We would like you to go with you out to the field, and we want you to sing Kol Nidre and Hu Elokeinu and a few pieces from davening." My father said when you looked at them, you didn't see anything that they are Jewish or coming from Jewish homes, because they were acting not, they were dressed with a uniform and no one knew that they are Jewish. But when he came to the field, they all sat down around the tree, and he sang a Yom Kippur Kol Nidre, a Kol Nidre. And he says, such a Kol Nidre he never sang before and never sang after. These three guys in front of him, high officers, very high officers, were crying like children. They were crying, doing tshuva. And he says he never saw anything like that. The Yiddish and the Neshama came out in them. Even though they weren't maybe observant and they weren't kosher, and they were, but when it came to the Yom Kippur, to Kol Nidre, it came out. As a matter of fact, my father told me that he dedicated his life to music and to singing, because his unit that he was at, after him leaving, was bombarded and everyone was killed. No one remained alive. He was the only one survived. So he felt that the music, the Yiddish, the music, the Jewish music, the expressions were that he had a mission in life, and his mission is to be Mekarev, to bring and to inspire people with the nigina, with the nigun, with singing, with music, like in the Beis Hamikdash. It says in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Holy Temple, it says that the Levim, you know how many Levim were there? They were singing every day. You know how many Levim were there? How many Levim were singing at the steps of the Beis Hamikdash on a daily basis with instruments? Does anybody know? 1,150 Levim every day. Could you imagine a choir? A choir of 1,150 people standing on the steps of the Beit HaMikdash with instruments and singing songs to Hashem. Part of Yiddishkeit is music. So my father felt that the music saved his life, and therefore from then on, this is what he did. He used to sing and go around in Israel. When he moved to Israel, he used to go around to the kibbutzim, and he sang Lubavitch Chabad Nigunim, and many people got inspired and closer to Yiddishkeit as a result of his nigunim. That shows the depth of a nigun. A song is without words. A Hasidic song is usually ay ay ay, die die die, but you don't have words. Why is it that a nigun is without words? Because sometimes you want to express yourself, and words, there's no words to express yourself. The only thing you express yourself is through a sound, through a nigun, ay ay ay. This is also the explanation of a shofar. The shofar is a plain sound, a plain blast. It's not an instrument that you play with notes. It's a certain blast, a certain something that comes from the bottom of the heart. The Yiddish and Neshama. This is what Yiddish and Neshama is all about. My dear friends, this is what it's all about, and this is what we have to do as the Yom Tovim are coming up. We have to get a little stronger. We have to learn more. We have to do more. We have to do mitzvahs. We have to check the mezuzahs, and same thing, men. You have to check your tefillin. If you don't have tefillin, buy tefillin, and if you have one, check them. One more story about a mezuzah. Hi. I just reminded myself, and therefore, again with my grandfather. Just about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we had loss in Chabad. Rabbi Aronov, who was a sofer. He lived in Toronto. and he passed on. He was a sofer. He was actually a student of my grandfather. So he told me the following story, a very interesting story. He said, my grandfather, the sofer, he was a very poor man. They didn't have money. He sat in shul a whole day, and he learned and davened, and my grandmother used to sew the socks and fix things. That's the way they made a living, and they lived a beautiful life. They raised a nice family, but they were very spiritual. My grandfather was a sefer, and writing for him a mezuzah took days and weeks until he wrote up one mezuzah. You know, he went to the mikvah before he wrote every Hashem's name. He was a holy man. When he passed away, and Rabbi Aronov was a student of his, when my grandfather passed away, he left 2 pieces of parchment, unwritten parchment, and my grandmother had it. So my grandmother met this young student, Rabbi Aronov, and she told him, you know, I have these 2 pieces of parchment. Would you please take it? Do whatever you need to do with it. He says, no, I'm not taking it. I'll buy it from you. She says, no, I don't want you to buy it from me, but I want you, let's make a deal. You write for me 2 new mezuzot. I need 2 mezuzot for my doors of the house. You write 2 of them, and that will be fine. Okay. Rabbi Aronov, who was a young sofer, he learned safrut from my grandfather. He wrote 2 new mezuzot, beautiful mezuzot, and he was so happy to bring it over to my grandmother's house, little butke that she lived in. Okay, he hung it up. Next day or the day after, a few days after, Rabbi Aronov sees that my grandmother came in the morning running, looking for him. So he says, Rebbitzin, what is it that you're looking for? He says, I need you. What happened? My husband came to me in a dream, and he told me that the mezuzahs are not kosher. Not kosher. He just wrote 2 new mezuzahs. Why is it not kosher? He took it down, he checked it out, couldn't find anything wrong with it. So he checks it again, and there's nothing wrong. He doesn't know what's wrong with it. He decided he's going to take this mezuzah over to another rabbi. His name is Rabbi Silverman, who lived in town. He was also a sofer. He brought it over to him, and he checked it out, and he found nothing was wrong with the writing. But there was one mistake that he made in both mezuzot. There's a line that has to end with a particular word. You can't move the word, the last word, to the next line. You have to end it with that word. And he forgot about it, and he moved that word to the next line. He made the mistake. He forgot about it. Okay, so now he knows what's wrong. So he commissioned Rabbi Silverman, he's the one who went and bought 2 parchments, new ones, and he wrote 2 mezuzahs. The next 2 mezuzahs were nice and beautiful, no mistakes. He hung it up on the door, and on the doors of my grandmother's house. And a few days later, she shows up again, and this time he sees that she's happy. He says, what happened? What's now? So she says, my husband came to me in a dream, and he said that it's okay, and gave me blessings, and said thank you, and complimented, and left. My dear friends, you don't have sofrim. Maybe there are sofrim in our days like that, but this is of a sofrim, people that are so holy and so different, and the main thing is in a sofer that he writes the halacha according to halacha and according to the way it's described. It's not a generational. It's not something that holy or not holy. The main thing, it should be written the proper way. So, my dear friends, take your mezuzahs off the doors and check them out, or buy mezuzahs if you need to. And same thing, tefillin. And in any area in the house that you need to improve, to amend, do that, whether it's kashrut or anything. We're coming up to the high holidays. We should have a beautiful Yom Tovim, and blessings should be bestowed upon us for the upcoming year, and only goodness and kindness and all the blessings that you want, starting with the alphabet from Aleph until Taf. It says that every letter in the alphabet is a blessing, represents a blessing. So you should be getting all the blessings from Aleph until Taf, and upon all of you and your families, and only happiness and goodness upon you. And let us all say, Amen. L'chaim.
Chaim. Chaim.
Any comments, any questions?
I have a question, Rabbi.
Go ahead, you have 4 minutes.
There's a quick one, but since you mentioned the amount of Leviim that were chanting or singing in the Beis Hamikdash, where is the source, and how do we know, where is it written? How many of these Leviim? You said over 1,000.
Yes, I saw it written. I cannot tell you at this point the makor. I can look it up and
It's okay.
back to you. I did see it in a sefer, and I did see it. And actually, when I was in Yerushalayim recently, not long ago, I was there at the excavations, and they also mentioned it there too. So I can, I will not give you just the source if I don't have the.
Maybe I'll check.
But no, I'll help you to check.
Okay.
You'll help me, and I'll help you. But it is written. It is written.
Very
1,150, I believe.
Yeah, that was very fascinating. And also, I just wondered, since your father was into music and you're like musical family, are there any melodies that we know from the Levium that carried over? Any music they left?
You have a very good question. There is, in Chabad we know, again, I don't know, my father told me that we know in Chabad that there's a Birkat Kohanim that we sing, the Chabad melody. I don't know where he got it from. He told me that he got it from someone, I don't know them, that it's a tradition in Chabad that this way they sing the Birkat Kohanim is the way they sang it in Bet HaMikdash. I don't know where he gets it from. I don't know where he got it from, but it's something to think of. I mean, look, it's possible. I don't know if there are any notes of music, and it's, in those days they didn't have musical notes, so I don't know where he got it from. But in Chabad, all the nigunim, the miuchasim, all the nigunim that were composed and put together by the Rabbi, there are 3 types of nigunim in Chabad. There's the nigunim that the Rabbi, the Rebbes composed. There's the nigunim that are attributed to the Hasidim or to the Rebbes, but the highest level is a nigun that was composed by the Rebbe. A Rebbe who composed a nigun, it's not the nice melody and the high tone and the high tune and how high in the coloratura, and that a Rebbe's composition of a nigun has to do with Kabbalah, has to do with the higher realms, and maybe this is what he meant to say, that in Chabad when we sing the Birkat Kohanim, it was composed maybe by a Rebbe, by one of the Rebbes, and one of the Rebbes was able to put together the nigun based on how things were in the Bet HaMikdash. This is only my explanation. I'm saying more. You understand? But that's what it's all about.
Thank you.
It was nice seeing you all. It was nice to bring with you, and Rabbi Smith, you're doing great. Menachem, you're doing great. Hashem should
Thank
bless
you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Bronstein. This was amazing.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
And it was great seeing all of you. And
Thank
we
you,
have
Rabbi.
this,
Thank you.
we have this
Rabbi.
program every
All the
week.
best.
Hope to see you. And the guest speaker every week. We also have Torah classes every single day, twice a day. So if anyone wants to participate on a daily basis, you're welcome. And of course, you're welcome to come whenever is good for you. It's the same link. So we look forward to seeing you at all of our events and programs. Sei gesund, everyone.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi Bronstein, we wish you much hatzlacha and bracha.
Amen.
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 Thank you.
Take care.